They told me to breathe, to stay positive, to keep going, as if the ache I carried could be reasoned with, as if silence were strength and stillness meant peace. But they didn't see it. They didn't hear the grinding beneath my calm, the splitting, the dissonance, the secret war between what I show and what I cannot bear to speak. You feel it too, don't you? That subtle collapse inside, the one that doesn't scream but weighs, a pain so familiar. You stopped calling it pain. You called it being fine. You called it coping. You called it just how things are. But what you really did was bury it in distraction, in control, in shame. And now, it waits. This isn't healing. Not the version they sell, with tidy affirmations and quick forgiveness. This is descent into the very core of what you've denied, into the fracture beneath your smile, into the disowned parts of you that never stop suffering, only stop speaking. But the unconscious does not forget. It does not forgive silence. It stores every compromise of the self, like unshed tears behind the eyes. Every time you swallowed rage to keep the peace. Every time you numbed fear with work, with performance, with being strong. Every time you confused repression with maturity. They say time heals, but time only hides. What isn't faced is not erased. It is rehearsed in disguise. And you know this. Somewhere, deep within the architecture of your defenses, you know the cost. The tension in your jaw. The exhaustion that sleep doesn't cure. The deadness behind moments that should feel alive. These are not flaws. They are signals. Proof that something has been silenced. Proof that what was once unbearable was buried, not resolved. We were not made to feel nothing. The human soul wasn't built for denial. It was built for conflict. Glorious, wretched, inescapable conflict between the ego and the id, between desire and guilt, between memory and forgetting. And when we pretend otherwise, we fracture. Repression is not forgetfulness. It is a system of compromise, a delicate psychic censorship, the mind pulling curtains over scenes it cannot bear to watch. But the stage is still lit. The actors still move. The trauma still whispers through dreams, through symptoms, through the inexplicable ache in your chest when nothing's wrong. You think you're stuck because you're weak. But it's not weakness, it's defense. You built your stuckness like armor. You repeated patterns because they kept you safe. Pain can feel like identity when it's the only story you were allowed to tell yourself. But the story is incomplete, because pain, when unspoken, becomes identity. It becomes posture. It becomes your tone of voice, your habits of love, your fear of rest. It burrows into the unconscious and strips your life from beneath awareness, until you can no longer tell the difference between who you are and who you had to become in order to survive. That's what repression does. It doesn't erase the past. It embeds it in present choices. You want growth, but growth is not gentle. It is the cracking of the shell, the bleeding of old wounds reopened not to be healed, but to be seen. Growth doesn't ask for hope. It demands honesty. It demands you sit with your shame long enough to hear what it's trying to protect. This is the cruelty of the unconscious. It repeats what hasn't been integrated, not to punish, but to expose, to push the repressed into visibility not as punishment, but as necessity. The symptom is the message. The neurosis is the compromise. The conflict is the truth trying to find its way to consciousness. But consciousness hurts. Awareness threatens the ego's illusions. It unmasks the stories we tell to avoid guilt, to avoid loss, to avoid the unbearable recognition that we are divided and always have been. You can pretend you're over it. You can move on, date again, laugh again, achieve again. But the body knows. The unconscious keeps score, and it doesn't care about appearances. It doesn't care how well you've compensated. It wants resolution, not in comfort, but in confrontation. So, let us confront. Why do you fear stillness? Why does silence make you restless? Why do you sabotage love just when it begins to feel safe? Because safety is unfamiliar. Because joy threatens the inner covenant you made with pain, the vow that said, if I suffer enough, I'll earn love. But love is not earned through suffering. And suffering is not always noble. Sometimes it is merely a defense, a ritual of self-punishment for a guilt you cannot name. Go deeper. Where did you first learn that your feelings were too much? Who taught you that silence was safer than truth? Who showed you that to be loved, you must first disappear? The answers live inside the structure of your defenses. And those defenses are not evil. They were brilliant. They were necessary. But they are no longer true. The child who blamed themselves to preserve love, they still live inside you. The adolescent who learned to repress longing because desire led to disappointment, they still steer your choices. The adult who intellectualizes emotion to stay in control, they are still at war with the body's need to feel. But repression is not peace. It is a truce between incompatible forces. And that truce is breaking. You feel it in the restlessness, the anxiety, the quiet dread of doing nothing, in the emptiness after every achievement, in the longing that makes no sense but won't let go. These are the symptoms of a self tired of performing, a soul desperate to be heard, not fixed, not improved, just heard. This is not healing. This is exposure. This is remembrance. This is the slow, brutal, beautiful return of what you buried to belong. You want freedom, but freedom is the collapse of the false self. You want peace, but peace is not the absence of pain. It is the integration of it. So stop denying your pain. It is not weakness. It is not failure. It is the echo of your deepest truths, the voice of the exiled self asking to be named. You do not grow by silencing it. You grow by allowing it to speak in rage, in sorrow, in guilt, in grief. Only then does the real work begin. And only then are you truly alive. But perhaps you hesitate even now. Perhaps part of you recoils, clinging to the quiet agreements you made with yourself long ago. I will not remember. I will not feel. I will not risk being shattered by what I buried. The mind is cunning in this resistance. It deploys its defenses like sentries at the gates, keeping watch for any trace of truth that might disturb the fragile balance you call sanity, distraction, rationalization, cynicism. They are all disguises for fear. Fear that if the dam breaks, you will drown. But listen carefully. The dam is already leaking. The water has been seeping through in your restless nights, your compulsions, your endless need for more, your quiet sense of fraudulence, even in moments of triumph. The unconscious will not be silenced. It is patient, yes, but it is relentless. And its mission is not to destroy you, it is to free you, though the cost is everything false you have called you. You may think your suffering is an error, a glitch in the system of life to be debugged and erased. But suffering is not an accident. It is the residue of a divided psyche, the signal that parts of you remain exiled, cut off, ungrieved. We do not suffer because we are weak. We suffer because we refuse to feel fully what once overwhelmed us. Repression is the price we pay for survival in a world that could not hold our original pain. But repression is not mastery. It is postponement. And postponed pain does not fade. It festers. It mutates into symptoms. It returns in dreams, in strange repetitions, in self-sabotage that seems to come from nowhere. The pattern is not random. It is the unconscious staging a scene, over and over, pleading for your presence at the performance. Will you finally take your seat? Will you finally bear witness to what you have spent a lifetime running from? No one escapes this reckoning forever. Sooner or later, the weight becomes too much. The cracks widen, the mask slips, and in that terrifying, sacred moment, you are presented with a choice. Descend into the underworld of your own mind, or live as a ghost among the ruins of what you never dared to feel. Descent is not noble. It is not romantic. It is brutal. It is nauseating. It demands that you abandon the false safety of certainty and descend into ambiguity, contradiction, and grief. It means confronting not only the wounds inflicted upon you, but the ways you colluded with your own silencing. It means facing guilt, not to be punished, but to recognize your unconscious bargains with life. And still part of you resists. It whispers, what's the point of digging into all that? Why reopen the past? Why not just focus on the future? But there is no future for a psyche held hostage by what it has not yet mourned. The past is not behind you. It is inside you, structuring your choices, scripting your relationships, haunting your quiet moments. To repress is to remain its prisoner. To remember is to risk freedom. You will not find freedom in avoidance. You will not find peace in denial. And you will not find growth in clinging to an ego built for defense, not for truth. The ego resists precisely because it knows what the unconscious contains. Rage too vast to admit, grief too heavy to carry, desire too dangerous to allow. But the unconscious has its own logic. It will not stop pressing forward. It will not let you rest until you confront the full scope of what you once could not bear. Perhaps this feels cruel, and yet there is a strange mercy in it. For the only way out is through. The only way to end the repetitions is to recognize them as messages. Your patterns are not punishments, they are invitations. Your symptoms are not failures, they are maps. They point to the places where you lost yourself, where you split in two to survive. And if you follow them patiently, ruthlessly, you may recover what was exiled. But be warned, you cannot do this without a cost. The cost is the collapse of illusions, the end of the stories you tell to keep guilt and grief at bay, the shattering of the persona you crafted to secure love, admiration, belonging. The cost is everything false, but what remains after the collapse is real. This is not healing in the way you imagine it, a gentle ascent into light, a blissful escape from darkness. This is healing as destruction, healing as deconstruction, healing as the slow, painful integration of the parts of you that never stop screaming beneath the surface. This is not about comfort. It is about truth, and truth will not flatter you. It will not coddle your ego or reassure you that you are blameless. It will demand that you face your contradictions, your complicity, your shadow. And in doing so, it will return to you a life no longer governed by avoidance. Can you feel it now? The pull of the unconscious, the quiet invitation to descend. You can resist it a little longer, if you wish. You can keep performing strength. You can keep numbing the ache with distractions. But the cost will grow. The unconscious will not forget. And one day, the defenses you worship will fail. When that day comes, may you have the courage to stop running, to stop denying, to stand, trembling, and face the rawness of what you are. Because only then and not before can the possibility of freedom begin to stir. The unconscious is not a place you visit. It is the very soil of your existence. You were born into it, helpless and unguarded, long before the ego could raise its walls. As a child, you felt everything with a naked intensity, joy uncontained, pain unmediated. But the world is not built to hold such rawness, so you learned to split, to suppress the parts of yourself that felt unsafe, unworthy, unwanted. Each act of suppression was an act of love for survival. Each repression was a compromise. If I disown this rage, maybe they will not leave. If I silence this longing, maybe I will be safe. These are the secret pacts the psyche makes in its infancy, and they linger like old ghosts, directing your life from the shadows. And yet, even now, you hesitate to look. To turn inward feels like a betrayal of the very self you built to endure. You fear that if you dismantle your defenses, there will be nothing left. But this is the greatest lie repression whispers, that you are your defenses, that without them you are void. In truth, the void was created by their presence. Beneath them lies not emptiness, but the exiled fragments of your wholeness, waiting for your return. Do you not see how the same patterns repeat? How your relationships circle the same drain? How success never quiets the sense of fraudulence gnawing at the edge of your mind? This is not coincidence. This is the unconscious, staging the unresolved. You are not cursed. You are compelled. Compelled to recreate the old conflicts, the old pains, in the hope that this time you might recognize them, that this time you might choose differently. But recognition requires courage, the courage to stop blaming fate, to stop blaming others, to stop blaming yourself, to see the deeper truth. The enemy is not out there. It is within. It is the unexamined alliance you made with your suffering. Your symptoms, anxiety, numbness, restlessness, self-sabotage are not random malfunctions. They are compromises. They are the echoes of the child within you who learned that feeling fully was dangerous, that to grieve would drown you, that to rage would destroy what little love you had. So you built barriers. You buried what could not be felt. And now, as an adult, you call it strength, composure, resilience. But listen closely. Resilience is not repression. Composure is not peace. And strength, built on self-denial, is brittle. You cannot outrun what you have buried. The unconscious waits, patiently. It waits in your dreams, in the tension of your body, in the uncanny sense that you are not quite living your own life. The more you avoid it, the more it finds other ways to speak, in illness, in addictions, in restless searching for something you cannot name. To face it is terrifying, but to deny it is worse. You say you want freedom, but freedom is not given. It is earned through confrontation, not with others, not with the world, but with yourself, with the pain you swore never to feel again. with the memories you swore never to recall, with the guilt that has shaped you in silence. True freedom is not the absence of suffering. It is the end of avoidance. It is the integration of what you were too young, too fragile, too alone to face the first time. And still, the ego resists. It will do anything to preserve its fiction of control. It will flood you with doubt. It will tell you, this is unnecessary. This is indulgent. The past is gone. Move on. But these are not truths. They are defenses. And the more you cling to them, the more you remain bound to what you pretend to have escaped. The unconscious has its own ethics. It cares nothing for appearances. It demands only truth. And truth is never clean. It is never easy. It will strip away your excuses, your justifications, your illusions of innocence. It will leave you naked before yourself. And yet, in that nakedness lies the first flicker of real strength, the strength not of denial, but of integration. This is not a journey for the faint of heart. To descend is to confront everything you have exiled. The desire you call shame, the rage you call sin, the grief you call weakness. It is to walk willingly into the labyrinth of your own mind, knowing there is no guarantee of return. But the alternative is worse. To remain forever at the surface, condemned to reenact the past without knowing why. To seek in others what you have lost within. Do you understand now why you feel stuck? Why you repeat what you swore to escape? It is because the self you have constructed cannot grow. It was built to protect, not to evolve. Growth requires dismantling. It requires you to let the exiled parts speak, not to forgive them, not to fix them, but simply to listen. And so I ask you again, will you listen? Will you descend? Will you allow what has been silenced to speak, even if its voice terrifies you? Or will you cling to the fragile comfort of repression, knowing it cannot hold forever? The choice is yours. It has always been yours. But remember, to deny your pain is to deny yourself. And no amount of distraction, achievement, or affection can fill the hollow left behind. One day, perhaps soon, the defenses will crack. The unconscious will surge forward, not as an enemy, but as a tidal wave of truth. And when it does, may you not run, may you not numb, may you not beg for quick relief. May you stay. May you let the wave break you and in breaking finally set you free. And yet, even as I speak, I know there is a part of you listening in secret. A quiet, hidden part that has grown tired of holding the facade together. It is weary of the smiling, the performing, the endless striving to appear intact while something deep within you whispers, "This isn't it. This isn't all there is." That whisper is not your enemy. It is not weakness. It is the first tremor of truth, shaking the foundation you built to protect yourself. You fear that if you follow it, you will be consumed. But the real danger lies in ignoring it. For every time you deny that whisper, you deny the self that longs to emerge from behind the barricades of repression. What are you so afraid of seeing? What terror do you imagine lies in the depths? Perhaps it is the rage you buried as a child. Rage at those who were supposed to care for you but failed. Rage at life itself, for placing you in a world that felt cold and indifferent to your need for warmth. Or perhaps it is grief bottomless, ancient grief for the parts of you that were never loved, never recognized, never allowed to exist in the light of day. To feel these things now would shatter the fragile peace you have constructed, but only because that peace is not peace at all. It is a truce between warring parts of the self. and that truce is temporary. The ego believes its job is to protect you from pain, but in doing so, it protects you from life. It censors not only your suffering, but also your vitality, your desire, your capacity for connection. It locks away anything it deems dangerous, forgetting that the locked doors do not erase what is behind them. The unconscious is not dead space. It is alive. It is the theater where your disowned emotions perform, night after night, in dreams you don't understand and behaviors you can't explain. You can avert your gaze for years, even decades, but eventually the curtain will rise and the play will go on. You will be forced to watch. You may believe you are in control, that you have chosen the shape of your life freely. But look closer. Is it freedom to follow the same path over and over? To desire what wounds you? To flee from what nourishes you? Is it freedom to sabotage intimacy because closeness feels suffocating? Or to cling desperately because distance feels like death? These are not choices. They are compulsions, rehearsals of the past, disguised as decisions. The unconscious is the director, and you are both actor and audience, unsure how you arrived on this stage. What would it mean to stop performing? To let the mask slip, even for a moment? Perhaps you fear you would collapse into chaos, that without your defenses you would dissolve into nothingness. But you are not nothing. Beneath the persona is the self you abandoned to survive. They are still there, waiting not as a fragile child to be pitied, but as the carrier of all that is raw, true, and untamed in you. To meet them is not destruction. It is return. The psyche is not linear. Healing is not a climb upward, but a spiral downward, into the muck and darkness you have spent your life avoiding. You will not find light by reaching for it. You will find it by descending into shadow, by touching what you have disowned and learning to bear its weight. It is not the pain itself that destroys us. It is the refusal to feel it, the endless effort to hold it at bay. There is no map for this journey, no step-by-step guide, no guarantee of ease. The unconscious is not a puzzle to be solved, but a wilderness to be entered. You must be willing to get lost, to stumble blindly through memory, fantasy, fear. You must let go of the notion that you can master it through intellect alone. The unconscious is not tamed by thinking. It is touched by presence. So sit with your guilt, sit with your shame, sit with the rage that has been censored for so long it no longer even feels like rage. These are not enemies to be defeated. They are messengers. They speak in the language of the body in tension, in insomnia, in the sudden swell of emotion that feels out of place but is not out of time. The past lives in the present until it is integrated. And integration does not come from force. It comes from recognition. You cannot change what you refuse to see. You cannot grow while clinging to the identity that was built as armor. The real work is not in fixing yourself, but in seeing yourself clearly, even when what you see horrifies you, especially then. The unconscious does not want you to be perfect. It wants you to be whole. And wholeness includes contradiction. It includes light and dark, love and hate, innocence and guilt. To deny your darkness is to deny half of your being. To repress it is to condemn it to act in secret, to sabotage you in ways you will never understand. But to face it, to name it, to feel it, is to loosen its grip. This is the paradox. What we repress controls us, and what we face begins to lose its power. You are not here to be comfortable. You are here to awaken. Awakening is not blissful. It is violent. It is the tearing down of illusions, the collapse of old identities, the slow, painful expansion into the totality of who you are. The unconscious will not make this easy. It will resist your efforts, confuse you, terrify you, but it will also guide you if you let it. Its chaos is not madness. It is wisdom in disguise. The time will come, it may already have, when avoidance no longer works, when the strategies that once saved you begin to suffocate you, when you realize that the cost of repression is too high to pay. And when that time comes, you will have a choice: to descend into the depths of yourself, or to remain on the surface and call it life. But you know the surface is not life. It is survival. And you were made for more than survival. So let the descent begin. And now, after all this circling, all this digging, you arrive at the place you have been avoiding your entire life. Not a place of clarity or relief, but of raw, unbearable truth. You see, at last, that there is no savior coming. No future version of you who will magically undo the compromises you made to survive. No external validation that will erase the hollowness beneath your successes. There is only you, the you, that was fractured to keep the world intact. The you that has been waiting in silence for recognition, not salvation. The descent has stripped you of your stories. The ones where you were the innocent victim. The ones where you were the flawless hero. The ones where pain had a simple meaning and suffering had a clear reward. Here, at the bottom, there is no meaning. There is only the raw fact of existence, that you are a being of desire and guilt, of love and rage, of creation and destruction. To live is to be divided. To suffer is to be alive. And perhaps now you understand why you have been running. Because to stop is to feel the weight of all you have lost and all you have done to lose yourself. The grief is infinite. The guilt is bottomless. The rage is holy. To meet them is to finally meet yourself. Not the self you show the world, not the self you aspire to be, but the hidden self, the one you rejected to keep your place in a world that could not love you fully. You thought you could escape this reckoning. You thought if you worked hard enough, achieved enough, distracted yourself enough, you could leave it behind. But the unconscious does not work like that. It waits. It waits for cracks to form in the walls you built. It waits for the day you are too tired to run. It waits for you to stop denying what has always been true, that you are not whole, and you never were. This is not a tragedy. This is life. Wholeness is not perfection. It is integration. It is holding your contradictions without flinching. It is making space for what you despise in yourself, not to glorify it, but to end its exile. It is seeing your shadow clearly and saying, even this is me. Even this belongs. Do not mistake this for redemption. This is not about forgiveness. It is not about healing in the way you imagined, soft, clean, complete. This is about making peace with the fact that you will never be complete, that the human condition is fractured, and to live authentically is to stop pretending otherwise. And yet, in this recognition, there is a quiet power. No longer do you need to run from your pain. No longer do you need to hide behind defenses that have grown brittle with age. No longer do you need to fear the unconscious, for it is not your enemy. It is your history, your truth, your life. And so you emerge not as the same person, but as someone who has touched the core of their own being and survived. There is no fanfare, no sudden light, no final closure, only a stillness you have never known before. This is the work, to stop denying your pain, to stop resisting the tide of what you are, to stand, finally, on the shifting ground of your own humanity and say, I will not run anymore. This is not the end. This is the beginning.